George Wallace.
Class, you have your second quiz. The weekly quizzes are open book and open notes. And those quizzes will cover material from the previous week. So let's see, what have we covered so far? So functional groups. Yeah, very funny. We covered chemistry. Okay, so be more specific. Yeah, so like I said in the first day class, if you don't review, you're going to forget. So obviously, some of you have been reviewing. Yes, we covered functional groups. We looked at one organic reaction, an alcohol reacts with an acid to produce an ester. What else did we cover? Isomers. We covered isomers on Tuesday. We also looked at resin structures. What are resin structures anyways?
Molecule can flip back and forth.
How do I know when electrons are delocalized? What information do you need? Now that's the definition of
Same measurement between the two atoms.
same measurement meaning.
Bond length.
Yeah, so we know information about the bond lengths from experiments. Okay, so let's take a look at. Let's see. Okay, so we talked about plants and odors, and we looked at isomers, and I think we did this one. We looked at stereoisomers versus structural isomers, and in this case here, the stereoisomers are which ones?
Different orientations.
And what's the difference between B and C in terms of naming? We talked about the naming orientation of these.
Trans and cis.
Yeah, so one is cis and one is trans. Which one's the cis isomer? Yeah, so B is the cis isomer because the hydrogen is on the same side, and C is the trans isomer because the hydrogens are across from each other relative to the carbon-carbon bond. And we looked at enantiomers, which are mirror image isomers, which are not superposed to each other. We also did two facts problem with the CTHAO and xylene. Okay, so let's take a look at this slide. So we looked at this reaction already. An acid reaction with an alcohol produces ester plus water. And we also looked at the reverse of this reaction. When an ester reacts with water, it will produce the acid and the alcohol. So this is an example of a reversible or equilibrium reaction. Now the same thing, the condensation also occurs when an acid reacts with an amine to produce an amide plus water. Okay, so let's write the functional group of an amine and an amide. So if we have an amine plus an acid, that forms an amide plus water. Okay, so an amine functional group, I'll draw it this way. So there's our amine functional group. You know, the acid functional group looks like this. So we'll do the same thing we did before in terms of breaking bonds and then making bonds. So what happens is that this bond breaks in the amine, and that bond breaks in the acid. The H combined with the OH to form water. And what is going to be the bonding in the amide. Yeah, so this nitrogen is going to bond to the carbon. Okay, so our amide function looks like this. Okay, so here's our amide. Okay, so really, this reaction is very similar to that alcohol plus acid to produce an ester reaction. So this is the reaction which occurs when amino acids connect together to form peptides and proteins. And I know a lot of you have taken biology, so this bond here in a protein is called I should have asked this question first. How many of you taken biology? A lot of you raise your hand. I had asked this question, but I did the opposite order. I should have asked. I've asked this question now. Now I've asked, how many take biology? None of you will raise your hand. Yeah, that's the peptide bond. Okay, so this is another example of a condensation reaction. Now, when the reverse reaction occurs, what is the name of that reaction? Okay, so when water reacts with the amide to form the amine and the acid, or when the water reacts with an ester to produce an alcohol plus an acid, that's called a hydrolysis reaction. Okay, now let's take a look at these reactions. So an alkene can react with hydrogen to produce an alkane. So we have an alkene plus hydrogen to produce an alkane. So what's happening is that an alkene has a carbon-carbon double bond, and this is hydrogen. So what happens is that one hydrogen bonds to one carbon double bond, the other hydrogen bonds to the other carbon double bond, and that produces an alkane. Okay, so this is one application of this reaction with to convert an unsaturated fat to a saturated fat. So here's our example. Okay, so we have an unsaturated fat. An unsaturated fat has at least one carbon-carbon double bond, and this is the example of the saturated fat. Okay, and then another example of this type of reaction is called a hydration reaction. Okay, so in this case, one H, the H from the water bonds to one carbon, the OH bonds to the other carbon, and then our product is an alcohol.
What does the EG stand for?
Well, EG means for example. Yeah, for example. That's, I think that's a Latin abbreviation or something. I can't remember. So this is a way to make an alcohol. So if you didn't want to ferment sugar from, say, grapes or barley or potatoes or something, you can take ethylene react it with water, and you would make this alcohol. What is the name of this alcohol? The ethanol. So for this reaction to occur, you also need a catalyst. So usually the catalyst is some sort of acid. Yeah, an acid catalyst. Okay, so these are two examples of addition reaction. So we're adding atoms to each carbon in the carbon-carbon double bond. Okay, so that's an example of addition reaction. And then the last reaction are these oxidation reactions. Now in chemistry, we talk about oxidation and reduction. And what is the definition of oxidation? When something loses electrons. And then reduction is when something gains electrons. Okay, so we're going to look at these. We'll look at this oxidation reaction. Okay, so we're going to look at the alcohol. Oxidation reactions. Now, before we talk about these reactions, we're going to define alcohol types. So, for example, there's a primary alcohol. And a primary alcohol has one carbon bonded to the carbon bonded to the alcohol functional group. Okay, so